Welcome to the Fundamentals of Fitness, the podcast where we strip away the noise, the guilt, and the unrealistic expectations around health and fitness, and we focus on what actually works in real life. I'm Alison, your no-nonsense coach. So whether you're out on a walk, driving to work, in the gym, or simply taking a bit of time for yourself, welcome. And thanks for being here. Today we're going to talk about confidence, because confidence is one of those things that everybody seems to want more of. People want confidence to join the gym, confidence to wear certain clothes, confidence to start running again, confidence to train around other people, confidence to put themselves first, confidence to try something new. And yet, for something so many people want, I think confidence is one of the most misunderstood things in fitness. Because most people think confidence comes first. They think once they feel confident enough, they'll finally start. But what if that's backwards? What if confidence isn't the thing that gets you started? What if confidence is the thing you build because you started? That's what we're going to explore today. So pop on those trainers and grab that cuppa. Let's dive right in. I think almost everybody has a moment where confidence held them back. Maybe you've walked past the gym and thought, I'll join when I'm fitter. Maybe you've looked at a running group and thought, I'll go when I can already run. Maybe you've wanted to work with a coach but thought, I need to get myself sorted first. Or maybe you've looked at other people and thought, they seem so confident, they've got it all figured out, they know exactly what they're doing. And because of that, you stay where you are, not because you don't want to change, not because you don't care, but because you believe that confidence is the thing you need before you begin. And honestly, I can understand why people think that way. Because confidence looks like a starting point, doesn't it? When we see somebody training comfortably in a gym, we assume that they were always comfortable. When we see someone running confidently, we assume they were always confident. When we see somebody lifting weights, attending classes, competing in a sport, or performing at a high level, we often only see the finished product. We don't see the nervous beginner underneath it. We don't see the first session, the awkward first attempt, the self-doubt, the uncertainty, the mistakes. We just see the confidence, not the journey that created it. And that's where the problem starts. Because when we only see somebody's confidence, we assume confidence came first, but most of the time, it didn't. So why does everyone think confidence comes first? And let's start with most common things I hear from people who are thinking about making a change. I just need a bit more confidence. And on the surface, that sounds completely reasonable. Confidence feels like something that should come before action. After all, if you're nervous about something, surely it makes sense to become confident first, right? The problem is that's not usually how confidence works. Think back when you first learned to drive. Were you confident? Probably not. Most people grip the steering wheel too tightly, overthink every decision, worry about making mistakes, and spend half the lesson convinced they're about to stall. But you don't become confident before you started driving. You became confident because you started driving. Lesson after lesson, mistake after mistake, experience after experience, confidence came afterwards. Fitness works exactly the same way. And yet so many people expect it to be different. They think I'll go to the gym when I'm more confident. But the gym is often where confidence gets built, not where it's required. This is especially common with people who are new to exercise. They imagine walking into a gym and immediately being judged. They think everyone is watching, everyone is noticing, everyone is somehow paying attention to what they're doing. And because they feel nervous, they interpret that nervousness as a sign they're not ready. But nervousness doesn't mean you're not ready. It means often you're doing something unfamiliar. And unfamiliar things feel uncomfortable. That's normal. Think about a skill, any skill that you've ever learned. Driving, swimming, public speaking, starting a new job, learning a sport. The beginning is rarely comfortable. Not because you're incapable, but because you're inexperienced. That's a huge difference. I remember one of my ladies coming in for a trial session years ago. She was absolutely terrified. Not nervous, terrified. She spent months thinking about joining, months thinking about getting healthier, months talking herself out of it. And when she arrived, she apologized repeatedly. She apologized for her fitness level. She apologized for not knowing what to do. And she apologized for being nervous. And I remember saying to her, you do realize everyone starts somewhere, right? Because she was looking around the gym, comparing her first day to somebody else's 5th year. And that's a comparison nobody wins. What was interesting was what happened a few months later. The same woman who was scared to walk through that door was now chatting to people, using equipment confidently, trying new exercises, asking questions and laughing during her sessions. The confidence had appeared, not before she started, because she started. I think social media has amplified this problem enormously because social media usually is a highlight reel. You see people at their confidence stage. You see the finished product, the transformation photo, the PB, the race medal, the personal best, the athlete on the podium. You don't see the uncertainty that came before it, the mistakes, the failures, the awkward beginnings. And because of that, people start believing confidence is something you're supposed to have before you take action, instead of understanding that confidence is often the reward for taking action. So think about something in your life that you now feel confident doing: driving, working, parenting, coaching, training, anything. Were you confident on day one? Or did confidence arrive because you kept showing up? Most of the time, it's the second one. And that's important. Because if confidence is built through action, then waiting for confidence before you start doesn't make much sense. It's a bit like waiting to get fit before going to the gym. You're waiting to do the very thing that the process itself helps create. And that's where we're going next. Because if confidence doesn't come before action, where does it come from? So if confidence doesn't usually come before action, then where does it come from? The answer is surprisingly simple. Confidence comes from evidence, not positive thinking, not motivational quotes, no somebody telling you how amazing you are. Evidence. Because confidence is really just trust. Trust in your ability to do something, and trust is built through experience. Think about somebody you trust deeply. You probably don't trust them because they told you to. You trust them because they've repeatedly shown you they can be trusted. Confidence works in a very similar way. You trust yourself because you're repeatedly showing yourself that you can do something. That's why confidence isn't something you find, it's something you build. Let's use a gym example for you. Imagine somebody has never lifted weights before. One day they don't feel confident. How could they? They've never done it before. Everything feels unfamiliar. The equipment is unfamiliar. The exercises are unfamiliar. The environment is unfamiliar. But then they do one session and nothing terrible happens. Then they do another and another and another. Slowly, their brain starts collecting evidence. Evidence that they can use the equipment. Evidence that they can complete a workout. Evidence that they belong there, and evidence that they can learn. And eventually something interesting happens. The confidence begins to grow. Not because someone handed it to them, because they earned it, one session at a time. Let's have an athlete example. Think about Lewis Hamilton. When Lewis first got into a kart as a child, he wasn't a 7-time world champion. He wasn't one of the greatest drivers in history. He was a kid learning a new skill, making mistakes, learning, improving, gathering evidence. The confidence people see today wasn't created overnight. It was built through thousands of laps, thousands of training sessions, thousands of moments where he proved to himself that he could perform. That's what confidence is, accumulated evidence. And while most of us aren't trying to become Formula One drivers, the principle is exactly the same. Every time you show up for yourself, you're collecting evidence. Evidence that you can keep promises to yourself. Evidence that you can handle discomfort. Evidence that you can do difficult things. And that's where the real confidence comes from. I often like to think of confidence like a bank account. Every positive action is a deposit. Every workout completed, every walk taken, every healthy choice, every difficult conversation, every time you do something that stretches you slightly, deposit, 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 deposit. Over time, these deposits add up. And eventually, you have enough evidence to genuinely believe, I can do this. The problem is that many people are trying to make withdrawals before they've made deposits. They want confidence before they've collected any evidence. But confidence doesn't usually work that way. You build it first, and then you feel it. One of my clients wanted to start strength training. She was convinced she wouldn't be able to do it. Convinced. Every exercise came with, I'm not very good at this. I probably can't do that. I've never been strong. And honestly, at the beginning, she wasn't particularly strong. But that wasn't the point. The point was that every session provided evidence she could learn, evidence that she could improve, and evidence that she was stronger than she thought she was. Fast forward several months, and the weights had increased, the exercises have progressed, and her body has changed. But the biggest change wasn't the physical one. It was the way she spoke about herself. She no longer said, I'm not strong. She started saying, I couldn't have done this 6 months ago. That's confidence, not arrogance, not ego. Evidence. I think it's incredibly important because so many people are trying to feel confident before they begin. They're waiting for certainty, waiting for belief, and waiting for the reassurance. But the reassurance often comes from the doing, not before it. That's why confidence and action are so closely linked. Action creates evidence. Evidence creates confidence, and confidence makes future action easier. And then the cycle repeats. It's a positive loop. One small action leads to another, and another, and another, until eventually you're doing things that once felt impossible. Not because you suddenly became a different person, but because you've built enough evidence to believe that you're capable. So think about something you're currently lacking confidence in. Maybe it's joining the gym. Maybe it's lifting weights. Maybe it's running, trying a new sport. Maybe it's just putting yourself first. Now ask yourself this. Am I waiting for confidence, or am I willing to build it? Because those two are very different approaches. One keeps you standing still, the other moves you forward. And that's where we're heading next. Because once you understand that confidence is built through evidence, you start to realize something else. Confidence doesn't create action. Very often, action creates confidence. And that leads us into one of the most powerful ideas in this entire episode, the confidence loop. So far, we've talked about two really important ideas. First, confidence usually doesn't come before action. And second, confidence is built through evidence. Now let's put these two ideas together. Because when you do, you start to see something that changes the way you think about confidence completely. What I call the confidence loop. Most people believe the process looks like this. Confidence leads to action, leads to results. In other words, I'll do the thing when I feel confident enough. But in reality, for most people, it actually works the other way around. Action leads to evidence, leads to confidence, leads to bigger action. That's the loop. You take a small action, the action gives you evidence. The evidence builds the confidence, and the confidence makes the next action easier. And then the cycle repeats. The problem is that many people never get the loop started because they're waiting for the confidence to arrive first. They're standing at the beginning of the process, waiting for the end of the process. And that's why so many goals stay stuck in the planning stage. Think about almost anything you've ever become good at. Driving, learning a job, public speaking, coaching, sport, things like those. The first attempt is usually the most uncomfortable. Not because you're incapable, but because you're inexperienced. Once you've done something a few times, the uncertainty starts to disappear. You know what to expect. You understand the environment. You've survived it before. And every time that happens, confidence grows a little more. That's the loop in action. I remember working with a client who was absolutely convinced she couldn't run. Not that she wasn't very good at it. She genuinely believed she couldn't do it. She spent years telling herself, I'm not a runner. And because she believed that, she avoided running entirely. Then one day we made a deal. She wasn't going to run 5K. She wasn't going to run a marathon. She was simply going to jog for 1 minute. 1 minute. That's it. And you know what happened? She completed a minute. Not comfortably and not elegantly, but she did it, which gave her evidence. Evidence that maybe she could run. The following week, she did a little more, then a little more, then a bit more. Months later, she completed an event she never thought was possible. The biggest thing that changed wasn't her fitness. It was her belief about herself, because every run strengthened the confidence loop. This is why I'm such a big believer in small wins. People often underestimate them because they don't feel impressive. A short walk doesn't feel impressive. A beginner workout does not feel impressive. A small habit doesn't feel impressive either. But confidence doesn't care whether something looks impressive. Confidence cares about evidence. And small wins provide that evidence. Lots of it. Every single time you do something you said you were going to do, you're teaching yourself something. You're teaching yourself, I can follow through. I can be consistent. I can handle discomfort. I can improve. Those lessons build confidence far more effectively than positive thinking ever could. This is also why comparison can be so damaging, because comparison encourages you to focus on somebody else's evidence instead of your own. You look at someone who's 10 years into their fitness journey, or someone who's been training since they were a teenager, or somebody who's already achieved the goal you're working towards, and suddenly your own progress feels really small. You're comparing your evidence to theirs, their chapter 20 to your chapter 1, and that's never going to feel good. The truth is that confidence grows fastest when you focus on your own evidence, your own wins, your own improvements, and your own journey, because that's the evidence your brain actually believes. Think back to something you can do confidently today. Maybe it's your job. Maybe it's training. Maybe it's speaking to people. Maybe it's driving. Now ask yourself, were you confident before you started? Or did confidence develop because you kept doing it? Most of the time it's the second answer. Confidence wasn't the cause, it was the outcome. And that's exactly the same in fitness. The people you look at and think, wow, they're so confident, often started exactly where you are. Nervous, unsure, doubting themselves. The difference is that they started collecting evidence sooner. And over time, that evidence became confidence. Which brings us to the final part of today's episode. If confidence is built through action, how do you actually start building it? Especially if you're currently feeling nervous, intimidated, or unsure of yourself. Let's make it practical. So if confidence is built through action, and confidence grows through evidence, the obvious question becomes, how do I start? Especially if I'm nervous, especially if I feel intimidated, especially if I'm waiting for the confidence to arrive. The good news is that building confidence is actually much simpler than most people think. Not necessarily easy, but it's simple. Because confidence isn't built through one big moment. It's built through lots of small moments, lots of small actions, lots of small wins, repeated consistently over time. Step 1. Start smaller than you think you need to. And this is where a lot of people can go wrong. They make the goal too big. They decide that they're going to start to train 6 days a week, completely overhaul their nutrition, walk 15,000 steps a day and get up at 5 a.m. and become a completely different person overnight. That's not confidence building. That's overwhelming. Confidence grows fastest when success feels achievable. So instead of asking, what's the biggest thing I can do? Ask, what's the smallest thing I can successfully repeat? Maybe that's one gym session, a 10-minute walk, adding protein to breakfast and drinking more water. Small enough to do. Small enough to repeat, small enough to build evidence. Step 2, expect discomfort. And this is big because many people assume discomfort means they're doing something wrong. They feel nervous, awkward, self-conscious, and they interpret those feelings as a sign to stop. But discomfort is often a sign that you're learning. Think about learning to drive, or starting that new job, or trying that new sport. The beginning is uncomfortable. But it's not because you're failing, it's because you're growing. And if you start viewing discomfort as part of the process rather than a warning sign, everything will change. Step 3, collect evidence. This might be the most important step. Start paying attention to your wins. Not just the big ones, the small ones too. The workout you nearly skipped but completed. The walk you went on despite not feeling like it. The healthy choice you made when it would have been easier not to. The moment you did something that used to scare you, because every one of those moments is evidence. Evidence that you're becoming capable, evidence that you're becoming consistent, and evidence that you're stronger than you thought. And confidence grows from that evidence, not perfection. Step 4. Stop comparing yourself. Remember what we talked about earlier. Confidence suffers when we compare our beginning to somebody else's middle, or our middle to someone else's end. The only comparison that really matters is, are you doing better than you were 6 months ago, a year ago, last month? Because that's where confidence comes from, recognizing your own progress, not someone else's. Step 5, keep showing up. And this sounds really simple because it is, but it's also incredibly powerful. Most people dramatically underestimate what happens when they simply keep showing up. One workout won't change your life. One walk won't change your life. One healthy meal won't change your life. But repeated over weeks, months, and years, these actions completely change the trajectory of your life. And every time you show up, you collect more evidence, more confidence, more belief, more momentum. Not because you're becoming fearless, but because you're becoming familiar, and familiarity breeds confidence. I think one of the biggest misconceptions about confidence is that confident people don't feel nervous. And that's not true. Confident people often feel nervous too. The difference is that they no longer see nervousness as a reason not to act. They understand something powerful. They understand that confidence is built through doing, not waiting, not wishing, not hoping, doing. And that's available to all of us, not just athletes, not just high performers, not just naturally confident people, all of us. Because confidence isn't a personality trait, it's a skill. And like any skill, it improves with practice. So if there is one thing I want you to take away from today's episode, it's this. Stop waiting to feel confident, because confidence is rarely the thing that gets you started. More often than not, confidence is what you find on the other side of starting. The people you admire weren't born with endless confidence. They simply collected the evidence that they could handle challenges, evidence that they can learn, and evidence that they could improve. And over time, that evidence becomes confidence. You can do exactly the same. Start small. Expect discomfort, collect evidence, keep showing up, and let confidence grow naturally. Because confidence isn't something you discover, it's something you build. And if you've enjoyed today's episode, share it with someone who's been waiting until they feel more confident before taking action. Because the truth is, the action is often what creates the confidence. And if you're enjoying the fundamentals of fitness, make sure you're following the show so you never miss an episode. Next time, we're tackling another common belief: when consistency beats perfection every single day. Until then, train with structure, recover with intention, and build something that lasts. I'll see you in the next one.